Hi everyone and welcome to another review here on Theme Park Worldwide. In this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Shockwave, a stand-up roller coaster that's located at Drayton Manor in Staffordshire here in the United Kingdom. Now Shockwave was manufactured by Intamin and opened in 1994, the year of the roller coaster here in the United Kingdom that must have seen theme park and roller coaster enthusiasts from all across the world flocking to the UK for three big new rides. Of course, Shockwave at Drayton Manor, Nemesis at Alton Towers, and the big one at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Some of those being record holders. And with Shockwave, that was no different, as it was actually the first stand-up roller coaster to be built in Europe. It actually kept that title for a very long time. And in fact, as of 2021 to this day, there's still only two stand-up roller coasters in the whole of Europe. So Drayton Manor, pretty special really to still have this ride from 1994 in operation. It is getting a bit older now, but you know what? I really like Shockwave and I think it still rides really well, as you're going to find out throughout this review. Now with Shockwave as well, when it opened, it was actually the only stand-up roller coaster to have a 0G roll. And again, as of 2021, it's the only coaster in the world that's of course a stand-up to feature a 0G roll. So there you go, quite a fun little fact for you. We've seen quite a few parks, especially over in the States, that have actually transformed their stand-up coasters into sit-down or floorless roller coasters. And I'm really pleased actually that Drayton Manor have kept it the classic stand-up coaster because it is a draw to the park. It's unique for the UK and Europe to see that ride. So it's really nice that they've actually kept it just like it is. Now, as you always do with these reviews, let's firstly talk about the overall area where it's located, and that is Action Park. Now, Action Park's got some of the bigger rides at the park. It did used to be home to G-Force, but that was removed a couple of years ago. But along with that, you still got the likes of Stormforce 10 and Maelstrom in the area as well. And you sort of make your way up towards it, and Shockwave looks fantastic from off-ride and also where it's located in the park. A big part of this is due to the size of the structure for Shockwave. It really is fantastic. All the station buildings actually raised up, and the coaster itself, pretty big ride. You know, you've got to think this is 36 meters tall, a 119 foot tall lift hill. You know, so it's a big ride that you see when you come into Drayton Manor. So you've made your way down to Action Park and you are greeted by the beast that is Shockwave. Big ride. Now, like I say, you've come into the queue line and you've got this big building that's pretty huge actually, and it's raised up. The reason behind that, because of course there used to be a rapids ride known as Splash Canyon located underneath the station. The turntable for the ride was there, and then the rest of Splash Canyon's layout actually interacted with Shockwave all the way around the coaster. Unfortunately, Splash Canyon did have to close a few years ago after an accident that happened on there, and as always here at Theme Park Worldwide, our thoughts are with everyone that was involved in that. But as it stands at the moment, the station building still raised up there above what was the former rapids, and you know what, the views what you get from the station are fantastic. You climb up lots of stairs in there, and don't get me wrong, it could do with some more theming. I think that's the one thing I'd do with Shockwave if I was in charge down at Drayton Manor. It would be some more theming and make a bit of a storyline about the ride, because you're basically in this big wooden building that, you know, kind of looked better when it had a more of a Wild West theme. I always thought it's more painted like a light blue colour at the moment. I do think it looked better back in the day, but you know what, it's still nice to have the station raised up because it's different, isn't it? Once you've climbed up all them stairs, you make your way into the main station building itself, which is pretty big in there. You've got windows at the side where you can look out and see like Stormforce 10. You can look over towards the other side of the park where you've got Apocalypse. So, you know, you're pretty high up in the station itself. When you've actually got a train that's just coming in, it's been round the layout, that's just coming into the brakes. And you know what? You just kind of really build up the atmosphere, I always think. You can see it right there. You can see people's reactions, especially with how sharp the brakes are on Shockwave. You know, you can just hear it screech through the building, and that really adds to it. At this point, of course, you make your way down into the air gates, one of 6 rows, 4 people per row. That means a total of 24 riders per train on Shockwave. And this leads me on to talk about the train design. Now, if you've been on Shockwave or one of these stand-up coasters by Intamin or B&M, then you will know exactly what the restraint system is like. And let's just say it's not the easiest to get into, nor is it the most comfortable, especially for gentlemen. It's really not comfortable on those man parts, but it's a bit of a crusher. But yeah, I'll get more into that when we talk about the rest of the ride layout. But yeah, to actually get into it, you've got this area what you've got to step over, and then you've already got half of the over-the-shoulder restraint that's down. You have to kind of slide your shoulder into it, and then this pulls down like an normal over-the-shoulder restraint, but it's only half of it. So very weird. Imagine like a normal roller coaster restraint, but cut in half. Half of it's already there, the other half you've got to pull down. That is what it's like getting onto Shockwave. And once you've done that, you've actually got to navigate how tall you want to be. Now, they say put your feet flat on the floor, and then the whole back, the whole chassis to the actual seat lifts up and down. Very clever design. And then, of course, the operator locks it, and then they come round and make sure that, of course, your restraint is safe, and as well, that it's actually locked in the right position, because you don't, if you've got like a child who's riding it, their feet could be just dangling in midair and not touching the floor. And of course it would be fine, I'd imagine, from a safety point of view, but you know, that they are the rules of the ride. You've got to have your feet nice and firmly on the floor. But the trains aren't the most comfortable out there, but you know what, it's all part of the experience, isn't it, with Shockwave? And talking of the experience, this is it. We're getting dispatched. Starts off with a little pre-lift section, just a little straight piece of track. You can look out, see the layout. I do miss that interaction though with Splash Canyon just underneath. I am hoping at some point in the future to maybe see Splash Canyon reopen again, of course, with the enhanced safety measures. And you know, it really made that part of the park for me. And then of course you start to climb the lift hill. You go down a little dip actually before you go onto the lift hill, and that's like a classic move what they do. I used to do on a lot of older coasters actually, just all about sort of making sure you can get onto the chain correctly, and that's why they do it. And then you start to climb up the lift hill, 36 meters, 119 foot tall lift hill. And what's quite funny about this is that they've actually got little lights on the side of the lift hill, which I've always found funny. You know, if you go down to like your local garden centre and buy some nice lights for your garden, like on a post, proper like vintage lights they've got all the way up the lift hill, which, you know, they just still work as well at night, on the fireworks nights when it's open in the dark. They do still have the lights on, but it's just quite funny, isn't it? You just don't see many coasters that have got lighting like that. Of course, it's mostly there for evacuation purposes if they did need to evacuate people and walk them down on the lift hill. Once you get to the top then, some brilliant views looking down over the water off to the left hand side, all across the beautiful Staffordshire countryside, and you're facing the opposite way to the park at this point until you start to make your way down the drop. And I must say, if you're on the front row, it's pretty open. Like, this is a ride that if you're scared of heights isn't for you, even though it's not ridiculously tall. The way you are standing up, the way it dips down that little bit at the top, you're very open, very exposed, and I think it's a fantastic first drop. Like I say, I do like Shockwave, I'm a big fan. It makes its way down a 32 metre, 105 foot drop, which is great, and it's pretty forceful on the back as well, because you really get whipped off the top of the lift hill when you're straight down into it. Before you know it, the drop's really starting to peter out and you go up into a large loop. Now, the loop on a stand-up coaster, I'll never forget my first time riding Shockwave. Like, I was with my dad actually and just thinking, blimey, what's it going to feel like going through a loop standing up? Bear in mind, I'd done vertical loops before on other coasters, but never on a stand-up. So I just didn't know what it was going to feel like. And I imagine a lot of you can relate to that the first time you went on a stand-up coaster. What are inversions going to feel like when you're in the standing position and you're not seated? It's a very weird experience, but you know what? I quite like it. And at this point, the ride's actually pretty smooth. Coming out of that loop, which is fantastic. It takes it with some really good speed. You're straight up into that unique element, the only one in the world, the only stand-up in the world to feature that 0G roll. And you go straight up into it. And I must say, if you're a man, this is where it's a bit uncomfortable on the lower parts of the body. Going up into that, whoo, it whacks you side to side when you go up into that 0G roll. But you know what? It's still very unique, isn't it? The fact it's the only one, I can kind of see why it's the only one, to be honest, to feature on a stand-up. Zero-G rolls aren't really built for standing up, like on a coaster. It's more for a nice seated position, but you know what? They did it and they've kept it, and yeah, you know, why not? It's something a bit different, but it does whack you side to side. It's certainly not smooth going through that, but I love it. Like, I do, it's just something about it, going through that, thinking, this is crazy, I'm standing up, you feel your body just sliding side to side, and that's the beauty of how the restraint system works. Is it beauty or is it pain? I don't know, but that's what makes it so unique, going up into it with that. After that, you've got this weird straight section. I've always found this a bit weird. A straight piece of track where not a lot really happens. I think the idea of it was designed more just to get around the building, to be honest. They maybe could have done something a bit more exciting with it, but you know what? This was 1994 and stand-ups weren't really a big thing back then, so, and they're still not to this day. Let's be honest, even when B&M sort of managed to work their magic with the stand-up coasters, and you know, they've never really been a very popular ride type, definitely not in Europe. The fact there's only been 2 stand-up coasters, but yeah, even when B&M sold them in America, and they sold quite a few, but not as many as the classic sit-downs or inverted coasters and the wing riders. They sell a lot of them, dive machines. Yeah, stand-ups have just always been you know, something that they've not sold much of, but I'll come to something a little bit later on that's quite exciting to talk about. I mentioned B&M just, and like I said at the start, this ride was actually manufactured by Intamin, but you look at it and the track design and the support design, there is parts of it that resemble a B&M, and that's because the guys that went off to found B&M actually worked on this project with Shockwave. That's why the track looks very similar to a B&M coaster. At first you could look at it and think that's a B&M, but it isn't. It was actually built by Intamin. Following on from this point, you're making your way up now into the third inversion. This is the first corkscrew, first of 2 corkscrews that you go into, straight up into a left-hand corkscrew. Again, you take this with quite some speed. Very weird going through a corkscrew even standing up. It's a double corkscrew back to back, and you're straight up into the second one as well. Before you know it, it's over in a flash, and that is the one negative for me with this ride. It is over too quick. The layout would have been better with a helix at the end instead of actually just ending like it does, because you come out of that corkscrew and you bank round to the right into another random piece of straight track, and that is the end of the ride. But yeah, a helix there would have been fantastic, but you know, it would have took a lot more room and a lot more you know, engineering to have gone into it, to have done a helix there. But it could have made it. And also think of the budget as well when this opened. Drayton Manor, you know, was a family park back then. Unfortunately, it's not now, but it was a family-owned park. And to put in a massive ride like that and the rapids, you know, big investment, huge investment for them. You then come into probably the most uncomfortable part of the ride, other than the zero-G roll. That's the brakes. I tell you what, they are sharp. You come into them brakes and blimey, you must be going at this point. I mean, the ride's got a top speed of 53 miles an hour, but you're coming in to the brakes and it kind of feels like at that point the coaster's still got a lot of momentum, maybe, I don't know, 30-35 miles an hour, I guess, and then all of a sudden you're straight stopped. It doesn't gradually stop, it's straight into them brakes, and they are pretty uncomfortable, but like I say, that's just part of Shockwave, isn't it? Part of the uncomfortable is kind of part of the experience with that ride, and then of course that's it, the experience is over. Now, like I say, I really enjoy Shockwave. I think it's a good, unique ride. I think Drayton Manor have done well to keep it going for this long. I hope they can continue that in the future. You know, would I like to see them change it and put floorless trains or sit down? You know what, I would prefer it to stay a stand-up because it is unique, but you know, it wouldn't surprise me at some point in the future if we do see them maybe change the trains on there to either sit down or also floorless, because they could potentially lower the height restriction then as well to fit more with the demographic of the park. But who knows what will happen in the future. But I just want to mention what I did just about B&M and sort of talk about what they've got coming, and that's a surfing coaster, which could be quite interesting. It's a new version of the stand-up where you're going to surf. Now, I was thinking in my head, how amazing would this be if Drayton Manor decided, well, you know what, let's get new trains for Shockwave, the surfing trains, and the whole area could be amazing, because you've already got a water ride, Storm Force 10, so that's got a bit of a beach feel with the lighthouse. A surfing coaster would fit in. What else have you got? Maelstrom, that's all about surfing. You've got surfboards around it. The whole area could be themed up beautifully if they wanted to do something like that in the future. And if, you know, if B&M could fit these trains, like I say, it is an Intamin coaster Shockwave, but they could come along with it being pretty much their track type and hopefully install them on there. Wouldn't that be great? But that's another one to talk about, the future of Drayton Manor. That'll be coming up soon on the channel. But there we go. I would love to know your thoughts on Shockwave at Drayton Manor in Staffordshire. It would be really nice to know, so let me know down below in the video comments. I really enjoy it. Yes, there's a few painful sections, but you know what, I hope it stays as a stand-up, whether that be some new trains going on in the future or it retaining the current ones. So thanks for joining me for another review. New videos every single day here on Theme Park Worldwide, so make sure you check those out. Thanks for watching, and that leaves me with one final thing to say. Get out there and keep on riding. See you soon.